And we are just wrapping up here this week. High Road Leadership, John Maxwell, Chapter 11, which I suspect is going to hit some people right between the eyes because we see a lot of this in our world. We see a lot of it in our culture, and maybe, just maybe, see a lot of it in our history. This concept of keeping score, keeping a ledger. We learned earlier in the content that was a middle road leader behavior that can lead to low road. And here we are in chapter 11, learning about the reasons why not to keep score, and more importantly, how not to keep score. So I would love to hear from you guys where this one kind of caught your attention. Not a big chapter, yet a lot of meat on the bone. What do you guys have?
I really, I was finally getting to read this last night. You know, it's something that I learned a while ago, um, and I'm so glad that I did. But seeing it written out, where the different things, just new little places where you can uh, prevent that you can prevent yourself from going down that road. And the thing is, when you don't, you speak differently to the person who is. And it makes it a challenge for them. And they have to work really hard to keep score of something that you're doing. And you usually have a level of happiness or a level of peace or joy within you that they want. Unless they're just thinking that you're so happy that it destroys a victim mentality, a mindset.
Yeah, well, that was a great piece on that. Destroys the victim mentality because, section 4 on the why you shouldn't keep score. Keeping score removes gratitude by poisoning attitude. You cannot be in a grateful state and be a victim. They're antithetical to it. So what a great aha, Jeanette, tying right into the content. What else you guys have?
This morning, I live on this ranch, and there's a ranch hand that works here. And he took a couple of my lawn mowers, which are the pushing mowers that I haven't really used in a while. He said, I'm going to go get these fixed. And I walked over there today, and here was a wheel from one of them that was just shattered. and my riding mower won't start. And I said, hey, what's going on with this? And he said, oh, I broke it. And I thought for a second, and I went, well, I guess I'll just get mine repaired. But after I came back in and sat down, and just before the call, I was like, oh, that was actually a really good response, because that riding lawnmower that I have, I got for free because he's like, hey, I found this. It runs fine. And so I'm so glad I didn't react the way I thought about, like, well, dude, you've wrecked two of my 2 backup lawnmowers. How do you do that? And just say, oh, well, but I didn't. And I was glad for that.
Yeah. Awesome. Staying on the high road. You and I both know there was no intentionality behind breaking those. There could have been some, poor judgment or poor behavior or poor maintenance that happened, yet the intentionality. And again, that's part of being a high road leader. Traditionally, we judge people. We're judging machines. And we judge people based on their actions, and we judge ourselves based on our intentions. Even if our actions don't work out, well, gosh, I meant to do blah, blah, blah. I meant to be on time if we're late. There's all this on our intentions. Well, part of this high road leadership is giving that grace and looking at people through what their intentions are. And when you don't know, the default position is always that their intentions were good. They may have made a mistake. Their actions may not have worked out, but gosh darn it, their heart was in the right place. That's what a high road leader is going to do. And Tom, that's exactly what you did. Cognizant of it or not, consciously or not, what you did for that ranch hand on those two items. Who else?
That's also very therapeutic. Good morning, everyone. That's also very therapeutic. If I go through life and I say to myself, everyone that I encounter has good intentions for me, man, that relaxes me. That's like I'm not going through life and I have to put on a shield and a helmet because I'm going to war. I mean, can you think about how that just, ah, life is good. The sky is blue, even if it's gray. The grass is always green, even if it's brown. It's therapeutic to the mind. I love that.
Yeah.
What wasn't
ahead.
it? I think you and John Prescott back in the day, like he would talk about when I drive through traffic, I practice saying when somebody cuts me off, well, isn't that interesting? They must be in a hurry. Instead of, because after so long and all this stuff. And so that, I mean, practice makes perfect, or certainly makes better, but that was a response that he's touted to have. And I think that's something that you talked about quite often.
Yeah,
Isn't
well,
that interesting?
real conversation around that, and this ties me into two things I want to share with you guys to make sure that we anchor in this week. Was what is your normal default behavior, attitude, energy when somebody comes from the left, cuts you off, and then hits their brakes to take the off ramp?
Many people do that bird.
You've got some interesting labels for them. Usually you have some interesting conversations about them in your head. And what does that do to the other person? Not a damn thing. And yet, what is it doing to you? Okay. You're getting worked up. You're changing your energy, your state. You're poisoning yourself with that internal conversation. So what if that person who just did that, man, was, let's say it's a young man who did it, and he was on his way to the hospital to go meet his wife who's having their firstborn child. Now what's your attitude? You're rooting for him. You're man, take care of yourself. Be nice. I don't want you getting hurt. I want to make sure you get there okay. Yet you're rooting for him. Again, what did it do to that other driver? Nothing. Yet what did it do for you? It lifted you up. And yet this whole process, this looking at things this way, there's a whole lifetime of external influences, otherwise known as programming, that we've all picked up. And so like Tom bringing this up, he remembers nuggets from when we were together, and yet we still get a plus. And so I love this one little nugget just to point out how deep the programming is. How many of you ever heard the word paranoid? Raise your hands. Yeah, every hand's up, right? A paranoid. In the highest definition, that belief that the world, the universe is conspiring against you, that everything's going to go wrong. Like client you were talking about, getting worked up. My gosh, I got to put on my armor and my shield and go into the day to battle. How many of you before Coach Russ have ever heard of the word pronoid? And not a hand goes up. Pronoid is the opposite of paranoid. Yet we've never been trained. We've never been raised on it. It's never been plugged into our life, into our lexicon, that we could have a belief that the world, the universe is conspiring for our success. And amazing things are going to happen every day. What if you lived a pronoid existence? You know what's awesome about it? All of a sudden, magic really happens. Things fall into place. Good stuff just shows up because you are manifesting it through who you're being. You're being paranoid. By the way, people that you know that are truly paranoid, they think stuff is always wrong, always bad. What's their life usually like? Yeah, always wrong, always bad. The opposite works. Client, I saw your finger up.
I got to come from a spiritual perspective. If I serve an everlasting being who created me with the intent of me living forever eventually, and has my good intent as part of their creative process, dude, we're already there. We already just have to accept it. That is already how, in my view, I can't speak for anyone else, in my view, how creation was already functioning. That is the default position. We were created in love, to be a forever being eventually. And the universe is conspiring for us. I mean, come on, y'all. It already is.
It is for those that are willing to have that belief. See, it's like our subconscious. Everything going on around us has no judgment. It has no filter. Whatever you use as your own filters are what shows up. I love this conversation about rose-colored glasses. Anybody know where that actually comes from? It's pretty cool, and you can look it up. There was a company in the turn of the last century that manufactured and sold chicken glasses. Glasses for chickens. Chickens, if another chicken is injured and they see blood, it will peck and tear that bird apart and ultimately kill that member of the flock. Rose-colored glasses makes it to where you can't see blood. Is the negative still out there? Yes. Is the positive still out there? Yes. You can choose to pay attention to the positive and back to the content, not keeping a ledger on other people's transgressions. I want to make sure we get back into this keeping track piece versus keeping score piece that's in here. Because keeping track is all about the good stuff.
And that plays really well. I looked up the definition. I looked it up in my dictionary. It's not there, so it's too old. But see reality as quite positive and regard themselves as responsible for good things. And so, and which they're convinced are going to happen. That's definitely seeing the rose-colored glasses and seeing things in a good light. But they still feel responsible for going out and do that. So I think that is a great segue.
Awesome.
Back to the book.
Absolutely, Tom. What else you guys have from the book? Thank you, Tom.
I think my favorite thing from this whole chapter was another quote. This Elizabeth Bilbesco quote. Blessed are those who can give without remembering and take without forgetting. Just found that very powerful.
Yep.
I think this chapter is a necessary chapter, and here's a place to take this discussion to what is seeming to be more extreme. And how many of us have now got cameras at houses, watching this, watching that. You've got Nextdoor, and what do you see most often on there? Some probably young kid walking up, ringing the doorbell, or checking the door of the car. Or we have an opportunity, and we're not going to know until each of us walks through that. But in the opportunity that this comes face to face with us, and not just on the ring doorbell, but in the person. So we can pre-plan, we can pre-think what we want to do in those, because there's fear rises in something like that. And keeping score often comes from fear. So where can we go? What processes do we have to help that person who has not had even an opportunity to have a discussion like this, much less ever see it modeled. And it doesn't mean it's going to give them a permanent instant breakthrough. I'll tie that into what client was saying. So this universe was created for good in everything that I know, understand, have seen. And there is that negative that is out there. And we're here because we change that. Not because they change us, but because we change them. We don't even have to have rose-colored glasses on. But that is a really good analogy. I didn't know that, Russ, that we're not looking to see the blood, but we're looking to, and it's not ignoring the chicken that is bleeding. We have the privilege of being the good Samaritan somehow, of putting the oil on the wounds and taking care of that person. And you don't have to have a lot of money to do that.
Nope.
You just get to be that person. And on page 196, how not keeping score brings people together. We're not keeping score of things here. It's not a place where you feel like there would be. But it's bringing us together because we're going after this high road, and it's knitting us together and strengthening each other. We've got places, people we can talk to, and brainstorm with.
Yeah, I want to take a dive in on this keeping track without keeping score, because they are definitely two very close. And yet, let's get into this. Keeping score means being in competition with others. People keep score to see who's the winner, who's the loser. Keeping track is about my behavior. Keeping score is about yours. Keeping track is about the management of my life, making certain that I do the right things for the right reasons. Keeping score is about the manipulation of your life, controlling you, fostering guilt, creating unhealthy comparisons, increasing emotional baggage on you, and prompting feelings of unfairness. So how can I be certain I'm keeping track and not keeping score? I look for positive outcomes. Keeping score doesn't usually produce them. So we're going to keep track of what we do, making sure that we're constantly pouring in, yet we're not going to keep score checking in on what others are doing. It's going to be us making sure that we are always staying in a place of giving first, of caring first. In fact, to stay on the high road, we need to focus not on what we deserve, what we're going to get, how we can serve. That's the high road. What else you guys have?
So that was a very important paragraph for me. One of the challenges in having 5 kids and having groups of kids near each other is they tend to keep score with their behavior relative to their siblings, and children keep score relative to everything, it seems like. And I had been telling my 16-year-old probably for the last 3 or 4 months before I even read this, hey, don't keep score. Don't keep score. And now I have a way to go back to, because he would always complain about that. He'd be like, what do you mean? I have to. And so now I can go, no, this is what you need to do instead. Keep track, because you're exactly right. I didn't think of it as competition before, but it is positioning yourself above somebody else. And that's the way they saw it. But I can also see, and this is one thing I love about some of the books we just pretty much can use in the workplace. And this is one of those good books that helps you with your children, helps you with your marriage, helps you with your relationships. And I did really like the keep track versus the keep score mentality.
Yeah, I love how it's been so innate, and it really is, that we keep score, this comparison. I don't know what part of our primal brain has that default position, but even going back to like T-ball, You've got, 6-year-olds playing t-ball, and the rule at t-ball is we don't keep score. Yet how many people have had 6-year-olds, and at the end of the game, the 6-year-olds damn well know who won and who lost, and they know what the score is, right? Even though we're saying don't keep score, it's just a natural part. And a high road leader is continually working and growing to tamper down that part. By the way, guys, John Maxwell's been doing this for 50 years. He's got 50 years of practice on this. Are we as good at him at keeping track and not keeping score? No. And he even talks here about moments where he's fallen into that trap and yet caught himself quickly and gotten back out. So I'm just going to again, as it talks in here, gosh, I can't wait for one of you to bring up the little story in the box, Josh, that you always talk about. Maybe, just maybe, we need to do that, not just for others, also for ourselves. What else you guys have?
I have something that relates to the book and isn't out of the chapter exactly. It's quick. One of my calls yesterday was to someone who is not a real estate agent, but he said, I belong to a book club and we read The One Thing by Gary Keller, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And now we're reading 10 times is easier than 2 times. And I said, that's awesome. I've already read the first 2 and right on. I just wanted to pass that on as endorsement.
Love that other people are doing the same stuff and learning. The more people we can help do that, the better. Thank you, Dorothy. Who else? Go, Ryan.
I kind of see like the keeping score as a slippery slope into the scarcity mindset, of just, it's habitually, you don't have enough. You may not think you're good enough. You may not be thinking you're not getting enough what you quote unquote think is yours. All of those things and in the book, it talks about, it says it's not about keeping score. It's about losing count. And that goes to the abundance mindset of, you know what? You had a deal fall through. You got 15 more because you've been out there creating a magnet of attraction to create that abundance in your life, even if it feels tight during those times. That you find joy, you find peace in knowing that you're creating this better life for yourself. And if something falls through, you still have so many other things to fall back on and find joy and gratefulness in all of those.
Awesome. And love that you're right there on page 199. That was one of the pieces I highlighted as well, Ryan, is forgiveness. This whole section on forgive everyone, because everyone needs forgiveness. And right there, forgiveness isn't about keeping score. It's about losing count. It truly is about letting go. So how many of us do we hear people say, I'm going to forgive, I'm just not going to forget? Well, you're not really.
There's a position to that.
Elizabeth, Jeanette, let's Elizabeth go. She was speaking.
I'm sorry.
First, so I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Go, Elizabeth Chang.
Okay, in the forgiveness, there's a deeper meaning in there. Is a lot of lately I experienced a lot of several women married bad husband and took all their money, run them totally with nothing and to the ground. And these women are full of hate and don't like themselves. They blame on themselves, so they got all kinds of illness. And I went to hospital, visit them, and I had to really come to the mind of, you need to forgive yourself. You just didn't know what kind of person, when they dating you, they show that caring, that loving, or good potential to be a husband. But it's not your fault. You need to forgive yourself in order to move on. And so that's another huge lesson in life, because you never know who you're going to bump into, who's going to take advantage of you, or who's going to put you in the corner. But among all this, we have to think this is part of a life experience. So we have better judgment. We have better ability to see people. We have better intelligence to handle different type of people in the way that we love. But at the same time, we have to protect ourselves. So fundamentally, don't run yourself to the ground just because you're blindly trust.
Well, it's interesting because I do think that as a high road leader, we are going to have a little extra faith. And in fact, he already talked about in earlier chapters that a high road leader, things are going to happen. People are going to let you down. You are going to get, quote, taken advantage of. Things are going to happen. And you just acknowledge that's part of your growth journey. Jeanette, what do you got?
Well, actually, along the same line as Elizabeth, there's what do we need to learn about ourselves that we make wiser decisions in the next place so that we, as she said, we forgive ourselves and we're not banging our head against the same wall again. So that applies in so many different ways that um, so where's the wisdom? Where did we become? Where in self in self in uh, review without self condemnation do we find the way to move forward in that? And so many times that becomes a self condemnation, whether it's a bad marriage or whether it's how did they get into the place that they were that they were vulnerable in the first place. So
Yep.
that's the
And by the way,
self.
that's a great piece of looking at it through what's your DNA, what's your piece of
Mhm.
that when it shows up. Josh, bring us home.
I'll tell you a quick story, and this just happened yesterday. I'm watching through one of the videos.
Well, I just muted you accidentally, Josh. Hit it back live. There you go.
Watching some videos, and I get a lead in, and she's asking some questions. And after talking for like 2 or 3 minutes, we figure out she's looking for a rent. And I'm like, well, I don't really do that, but let me see what I can do to help you out. So I reach out, find the listing realtor, line them up, send her the application through text. I mean, I literally spend like 15 minutes on this. And then just this morning, I find out that yesterday afternoon, they rented the place. They saw it. It was great. The guy's like, hey, we're going to send you, I think it's like a $95 commission, which I wasn't even worried about. And so I just texted her back, hey, glad everything works out. I don't normally, jump into these, but I'm excited for you guys. She's like, well, my mom wants to buy a home. Can you help her? And I'm like, absolutely. And I had no idea that at the beginning. But, and I had 15 minutes. So I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll connect two people. I don't mind doing that. And you don't always, you want to give without your hand out because you never know what you're going to get back in return.
Amen. So let's close out with this. I want to add one more minute. I know we're a minute over of reading in the box, the pathway to not keeping score. And John Maxwell says it's grace. How can we prevent ourselves from keeping score with others? I believe the key is grace. What do I mean by grace? Among the definitions listed, you will find favor, goodwill, mercy, pardon, and clemency. None of us is perfect. All of us make mistakes and hurt other people. All of us would like to be extended grace, be forgiven, and be shown goodwill despite our faults. If we desire that for ourselves, why not extend it to others? That's what being a high road leader is all about.